Hi, this is Janet Fitch, and it is noon on Wednesday Pacific, so it is Writing Wednesday, where I answer readers' questions about writing. I answer writers' questions about writing, the writing life, craft, the business, the psychology, the sociology, the anthropology, existential questions, everything related to writing. Um, and if you have questions for me today, put them in the chat and we will discuss them. And if you have questions for me in between Writing Wednesdays, please send me your questions at janetfitchwrites.com. That's my website. And um, I will be happy to answer your question, and I can formulate a Writing Wednesday around your question. So Sarah asked me, hi Amy, Sarah asked me, what does your scarf say? This is an art scarf, so it's, uh, you know, am I upside down? No. Um, you know, Duchamp owns urinals or whatever he owns. It's an art scarf. Uh, Hearst owns, I don't know, Damien Hirst, not my favorite artist, but whatever. Um, it's upside down. I don't know. Somebody owns everything. I wonder what that is. Who that is? O'Keeffe. So what different artists are known for. So that was an art scarf, I'm sure, from some museum. It was a gift. Um, anyway, welcome to Writing Wednesday, where I answer questions, even fashion questions. Writing fashion is very interesting. There is a whole book that I saw at a friend's house, writers and what they wore or something like that. And it really is kind of interesting, uh, taking a look at writers and their sartorial style, including Beckett and Hemingway. Very, very, kind of an interesting book. I keep it in the guest room because it's the kind of book, when you're in somebody else's house and you don't really feel like sitting down to a major novel. Um, it's fun to look through. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you. So today's question has nothing to do with um, clothing. It is from Marie, who's been showing up waiting for me to answer her question, and I hope she comes today because, Marie, we're doing your question. And the question is, can you recommend any writing exercises for creating lyrical prose? So we talk quite a bit about point of view, and we talk quite a bit in here about character. We talk about sentences. We talk about story structure. We talk about how not to go crazy, the look of the writing world. Hi. I always forget who this is. My lint is. I'm sorry. It's hard to have these handles. Kind of, I lose it, but I'm glad you're here. This is so. The question is exercises about creating creating lyrical prose. So let's talk about what lyrical prose might be. I actually teach a class in style, writing style. And so this is definitely in the category of style. And what do people mean when they say lyrical prose? I think that it suggests to many people kind of languor, which it doesn't have to. To me, lyrical prose means the music in the prose. And generally speaking, it is a longer sentence. prose with a longer sentence, because there's music in all kinds of prose. You know, you can have very staccato prose, like like Elroy or Hemingway. I mean, very staccato prose. Didion, and most people would not describe that as particularly lyrical writing. So lyricism tends to um, indicate a longer sentence and a sensual, a more sensual prose. And you know me, that's what I'm generally going for, depending on, who my point of view character is. But, you know, the style always has to conform to the subject matter of the book and the voice of the point of view character. Um, Lyrical writing can certainly be in third person omniscient, so that the poetics of the language have to do with the narrator rather than the characters, because you have a bunch of characters. Virginia Woolf is generally marked for lyrical writing and that long sentence, and just um, a beautiful sound, a beautiful word choice. Um, I love a lyrical sentence. I love lyrical prose. Beauty, beauty in the sentence is something that I really warm to. And some people are much more cut to the chase, in the lyricism focus. If you have sort of American literature being divided between like the Hemingway school and the Faulkner school, um, the long sentence versus the short sentence, the lingering on the beauty of the world or conveyance in a short, striking image. Um, One is more sound oriented. Um, the the short sentence comes across very punchy. Um, Didion is definitely in the former category, the Hemingway short sentence, punchy, almost journalistic style, and the long sentence, sort of the poetics of a Faulkner, we see in Joyce Carol Oates. We see in Robert Stone. We see it it can go either way in Dennis Johnson. Some books, it depends on what book. Same thing with Cormac McCarthy. Um, he started out as a Faulknerian lyricist, and then he shortened up, and uh, became more of a towards the Hemingway school, but still, his lyricism is can write a long sentence, but it's very scrubbed down. It's his prose. Um, it's very strung out uh, with the and, um, plain and this and this and this rather than subordinate clauses. Um, I think that you can look at certain authors. Michael Cunningham is always very lyrical. He's playing music as well as writing his story. Um, I think that the lyricism is an acceptance of beauty and trying to create something beautiful, and that's not always admired in our world. We live in a pretty tough world where people are impatient with beauty, people are impatient with someone taking their time to create something um, that rings, something poetic, something that lifts you out of the garbage, you know? I mean, it's more like Leonard Cohen, the garbage and the flowers is a good lyrical approach, as opposed to just blatting out a rock lyric 4/4 time. Um, there's more of a lilt in a lyrical style. You can even think of it as a waltz as opposed to a 4/4 time rock song. Um, there's a bardic, there can be a bardic quality to um, lyrical writing. You know, a bardic style, meaning in the old days in Ireland mostly, but also in Greece, you know, all most oral cultures, they there's some, you know, after dinner somebody will rise and talk about and recite a poem about heroes and legends and, you know, in traditional society, and that person is both remembering and creating in the moment, you know. Um, and there is a repetition and a rhythm to that kind of bardic storytelling or poetizing. That is, it is a song. I know when certain cultures read their poetry aloud, it is like they're singing. Um, and lyrical prose sings. You know, when you're writing, when I'm writing, I know when I'm always looking for beauty in the sentence. I'm always looking for beauty. You know, that's my taste. Um, even in the horror, there's going to be language, you know, a fullness of language. Uh, you know, there can be some punch too. There should be. But I'm always looking for that music somewhere. Uh, so exercises that will, let's see if Marie joined us yet. Uh, exercises that for crafting lyrical prose. The biggest exercise is always reading it out loud. Reading it out loud as if you're performing it for an audience, as if you're the bard and you get up after dinner and then you are going to tell your story. You want that music in the language, and often it's you know, certain scenes might be more or less lyrical depending on how much time you've got. You know, if your character's getting the shit beaten out of them, that's not the place for lyricism. It's a place for different kinds of poetics. A you know, a really staccato rhythm, but your awareness of the rhythms is really important. So, how do you become aware of the rhythms of your language and your word choice? Um, and so, the biggest recommendation I always have is to read poetry, something really beautiful, lyrical, voice, ear oriented, not E. E. Cummings, you know, something not intended for the eye but for the ear. Whitman, uh, Allen Ginsberg. Um, usually, it has a rhythm. Shakespeare, you know, it has a rhythm to it, and it's meant to be read aloud. Uh, do that 10 minutes before you write, and then write your scene. And your descriptions, especially. Uh, is there like one too many syllables? Do you find yourself stumbling? You know, then you've missed the music. It's generally lengthening your sentences. Maybe, I don't mean, you know, just and then, but letting the sentence unspool with dependent clauses. You start with an introductory clause, take a larger breath, which enables you to, let it roll rather than just this and then this and then this and then this. There's not a lot of beauty there, where not a lot of music. Whereas if you start making some longer sentences, then there's room for the roll, um, and you'll hear it. I know I'm always looking for that. I know where in my books I'm going to find that the most lyrical writing. It's usually times where a character is in their own thoughts, and has the time to pull back from the rolling action of a scene and have a thought about things. Um, Certain characters do not lend themselves to lyrical writing. Um, they don't think like that. They don't make associations. They don't have a thought and then a bigger thought. Um, they just stay on the surface, and it's a certain kind of book that we all know. So certain writers and certain parts of certain writers, my mentor, Kate Braverman, um, she had other problems with writing, you know, her preferences, but the lyricism is always there. And most of the people who studied with her, it will be there. Um, so, simple description of land, say, do a landscape. Um, and then you'll watch there was a this, there was a that, there was a that, there was a that. You know, you you you're going for if you're going for kind of a rolling feel, then you're going to um, look at something with love and listen to the music of the language. A person, a disinterested person, a neutral person does not create lyrical prose. It's not a bardic position to be neutral about stuff. It is somebody who loves what they're describing will get you to hear the music of the train. You'll hear the reverberation of the train, of the whistle off of the mountains, or in the humidity of just before rain, you hear the train wheels more. Sarah says, how often does lyrical language make it into your first draft? I mostly am working towards that sound just because I crave it, like some people crave like a milkshake. I gotta have a milkshake. I crave that sound. So definitely I will, it will be there in first draft, in calm moments. And then when something is pressing on the character, I'll lose it and then I'll find it again. So the character is scrubbing out their studio, say, scrubbing out their studio and thinking of all the work that they've produced there. And, somehow the walls remember all that work. So when she walks into that studio, she feels all the work that has been created there. And, um, and then she gets a phone call. And, it's, I don't know, the insurance adjuster or something. And then you have your insurance adjuster scene. She'll have internals, she'll see things. And maybe something she sees again catches that air, a little bit of that flavor of that music. She'll look out the window as she's talking to the insurance adjuster, and she'll see um, a kid um, tearing down the hill on a skateboard. no hole, no breaks, no nothing, and describing the flight of that child, um, the danger and the freedom is a moment. That's a lyrical moment. And then you go back to, you're in arrears for, and so descriptions can bring you back into that language. Um, Exercises that will help with this. Um, the biggest recommendation I would have for this, which is kind of dangerous in an unsupervised situation, kind of an unsupervised situation when you're doing it on your own. But a really good exercise is writing the long sentence. And the long sentence is you write for 10 minutes. And everywhere you normally would put a period, you put a comma, and you keep the sentence going. You keep the sentence from ending. Um, because what so many people have trouble lengthening their sentences without um, just adding on to the end and then the run on thing. If anybody's a teacher, you know what I mean. This is more learning to handle the dependent clause and what the dependent clause does for you. So you'll start out with just a part of a sentence. After you use some sort of a preposition, you want an introductory clause. After so and so happened, or before Fred left the house for the last time, comma, start with that kind of an introductory little clause, and then keep it going. Now, how do you keep it going? What's the difference between putting a period and a comma? A comma ends a thought, which is why so much early work is really dull. It's duller than dirt because the idea keeps ending. The person never opens it up. What happens, I think, is that the we're in such a hurry to get from point A to point B. Like, think of it. I always diagram this like a bug. Those water bugs that just water striders. They go right across the top. And imagine the actual content of the sentence is all under the surface. Maybe it's a short distance from one side of the little puddle to the next, but all the interest is under is inside that body of water. So if you scuttle across the top, you never get to all the stuff that is potential inside the sentence. That's why a lot of times I'll tell people, that the sentence is what's in there is what's inside the sentence. It's already there. You've already written it, but you've sped through it so fast because you're trying to get to the other side instead of exploring the sentence. This is better. So here's your bug, and it's walking across the water here. There's your little bug, and he's trying to cross from A to B, or B to A, or whatever, B to A, and it just is going on top. Whereas what's interesting or possible in that sentence is inside, is underneath. But if you don't take the time, if you're in such a hurry to get across, then it's like there was a boy, period, and unpacking the sentence gives you a moment to do that lyrical consideration of the world. And the longer sentence gives you a chance to get some rhythm and some beauty and taking you somewhere unexpected. in the dependent clauses. So if you never use a dependent clause, this exercise, the 10-minute sentence, will do that. And what you're trying to do is not end the sentence. It's like the game where you toss the balloon in the air and everybody just tries to keep it off the ground. You're trying to keep the sentence from ending, keep it off the ground. So, for example, um, on the way home from the fair, comma, Fred noticed. So we have an introductory clause on the way home from the fair. We have Fred, so we have our character, noticed, and then 4 herons, say, streak across the sky, period. Okay, so you've just cut your sentence short again. Bummer. Okay, let's try again. We're really trying to keep it structurally off the ground. Even if you're done with the 10-minute sentence, you are going, this makes no sense. I don't care. It makes sense on a grammatical level, and I want you to have the experience of that grammatical. What is it like to extend a sentence instead of ending it? So Fred noticed 4 herons, and then I could put a comma there. 4 herons, their long legs stretched out behind them, comma, streaking across the sky, comma, heavy with clouds threatening rain, comma. You can make a list and keep it off the ground. Different kinds of clouds, streaked with clouds, high flying, this kind of cloud, big bulby, that kind of a cloud, fist like, blah, 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 threatening rain, comma, racing for their perches. So you see how repetition helps you get through. So they're racing across the sky, racing towards their roost in a distant clump of cedars, comma, older than the neighborhood and towering over a blah, 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 and then comma, and then just keep it going, keep it off the ground. Oh, Wendy says that she's used the exercise with her middle school students and they love it. Yeah, because they're always being told to shorten it up. It's a run on, blah, 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 blah. And to be able to be told to keep it off the ground and keep it going. Then they learn about dependent clauses, that run on sentences are sentences that are, I could talk about sentence loading. This would be a good place for it, which means if there are 3 slots, like figure one of those old pigeonhole desks, and there are 3 slots, subject, verb, object, and you can load them each slot. You can put dependent clauses in each slot. You can put dependent clauses in more than one, into the first descriptors, re-descriptors in the first slot, talking about the object of the sentence, the subject of the sentence, after coming home from the fair, John, so that's about John, the subject. You can have more information about the verb. They soared homeward toward the top of the, and then you can have it be the object, those cedar trees, and where they're going and how old they are and stuff. It gets very complex in a long sentence. So that's just being very general about this. But kids are always told it's a run-on sentence because they add to the end. They overload that 3rd slot, and the sentence just falls over because there isn't enough ballast to hold it up. And you can, In this exercise, though, the point is just to keep the ball off the ground. And it doesn't have to make sense, but you'll see all the ways in which you can extend a sentence, all the ways that you can form a dependent clause with prepositions, with lists, with repetitions of different kinds, and you can make a rhythm because you are extending the sentence instead of that's not going to be a lyrical. You're not going to be able to keep going. So this is like figure skating. You're learning to what you can do before you fall down or end your routine. Um, and clearly, it is more useful, more likely in a more in a less action oriented story. So if you're writing, hardcore crime, there might be some lyrical writing in there, as you describe. I mean, Chandler is really good at that, even though there's a lot of punchy, kicky stuff going on in Chandler, there's also a lot of contemplation and like, what is the night? What is that night like? What is that alley like? And he can get lyrical about that. But it requires a moment where you're not in a car chase. Um, so let's see what other. So there's the long sentence, and we can try it if you'd like to do that. Just give that a try, and you can always, if we had a Slack channel, we could all post our our versions of the long sentence. But that's an excellent, um, can you write a paragraph that's 10 lines long? I bet after writing the 10-minute sentence you can. So set the clock and just keep that ball off the ground for 10 minutes. And I guarantee you will go places you never thought were in there. Things happen that you never thought would happen, insights into the character you never knew were there. Um, it'll be a really interesting introduction to the lyrical sentence. Um, so, who are your favorite lyrical writers? I mean, some people just have a taste for it, people like me. And most of the people who came out of that Kate Braverman workshop that I come from, uh, we we worked with her because we had a taste for it. So her work has a definite lyrical quality. A lot of people who were poets before they were fiction writers have that lyrical feel, that lyrical sound. I see it in Pynchon. I see it in Dennis Johnson. I see it in, well, obviously Faulkner and everybody who comes from Faulkner, like Joyce Carol Oates. Um, I see it in um, Stone, Robert Stone. I see it in uh, Ocean Vuong. Oh, absolutely. And take a look at The Winged Seed by Lee Young Lee. Oh, it is so beautiful, and it's a memoir, but it's a poet's memoir. Um, let's see, Catherine Harrison, Sarah says. Um, yeah, Amy, yeah, Isabel Allende, Wendy says. Yeah, a lot of our favorite um, writers have that lyrical quality to them. Um, who else do we have? Well, I know Sandra Cisneros is a wonderful uh, poet as well as a novelist. Patti Smith. Yeah, Patti can be extreme because she's very nostalgic and she wants you to come on the journey with her. And if you can't establish the vibe of the journey, then you're just looking at somebody, looking at some abandoned house. And why would she do that? Lauren Groff is, has that lyric capability. Um, yeah, she's wonderful with that. Um, I just, lots of women, Sarah says, lots of men too. Um, the beautiful, beautiful writing knows no, Lawrence Durrell is a lyricist. Uh, Malcolm Lowry can be, although what he's doing is kind of phantasmagorical. Um, Works in translation is harder to know because you don't know what's the translator and what's the writer. But to read the Moncrief, an older translation of um, In Search of Lost Time by Proust, I mean, that is extremely lyrical. And then if you read the Swan's Way, the first volume of In Search of Lost Time, if you read the Moncrief, and then you read the Lydia Davis translation, the more modern translation is suddenly not very lyrical. And it's interesting, and it reflects its time, you know. Um, oh, Sarah says, I just read a beautiful lyrical story by Brad Felver, Orphans. And is that in a certain collection, Sarah? Brad Felver, that's somebody I don't recognize. Felver. Uh, Orphans. Um, and then Wendy says Louisa Erdrich. Yes, Louisa Erdrich, Garcia Marquez, extremely lyrical. So generally, the long sentence is the giveaway. Anthony Doerr, because what would be the point of a long sentence except for the beauty? Henry James. I'm not a big James person, but his sentences are, incredibly beautiful. Um, Joyce, very lyrical. Um, so Sarah says, yeah, this is a story from a collection. She's going to get it. It reflects its time or culture. Yeah, it does. Um, Especially certain, I mean, our times are pretty freaking crass as far as does it do we make the most of our time? What time is it? How long is it? I mean, they have stories online that actually have estimated time of reading, you know, as if it's a bomb that's going to go off in your life. I don't need to know that it's going to be 9.5 minutes to read that story. It's like how we're getting very quantitative, and time is money. It's seeped into the arts, along with ratings. And maybe it's just people, they've been told, they, they've been told their attention span, is only so long, and, make it worth your while. Their attention span has been trained to, you know, be impatient with anything that takes longer than, check out at the grocery store. Um, oh, this Brad Felver is in Best American Short Stories. Best Short Stories, the O. Henry, the 2024 O. Henry Awards for Felver. I'll check that out. Donna Tartt, Marquez and Erdrich. Amy would agree with that. Donna Tartt. I haven't read Donna Tartt. Isn't that a shame? Well, it's good. It means that I still have her to read. Anthony Doerr. I haven't read him either. Um, I'd say um, lyrical writers take their time, and so they're in kind of a culture clash with our world, which is such a uh, you know, it's like I remember thinking how bizarre people were making films for phones, 5-minute films for phones. And now people think 5 minutes is a long time. It's like their patience for narrative is there's always counter trends though. So, and that's me. I'm counter trend. I'm trying to fight it. I'm in favor of the senses, and I'm in favor of lyrical writing, and I'm in favor of interiority, and all these things that the times are time is money. It's very capitalistic. This inability to give something time to unfold on its own. But so many people are, now they're taking they're meditating and stuff like that. And I just wish they would meditate for slowing down and centering rather than because they think it's going to lead to success. It's very late stage capitalism. Hi, this is uh, somebody joining us for the first time. Just Walter, Barbara Curry says. Yes, Just Walter is wonderfully lyrical and funny and has a big heart too. His book Beautiful Ruins is a favorite, but I know he's got several since then. Um, and then Hi, this is somebody whose name is Hi, their handle. So I'm sorry I can't address you by name. Your writing advice is precious and helps me immensely. Thank you. I'm so glad. Well, ask me. We're talking about lyrical writing. Irene. Hi, Irene. Um, we're talking about lyrical writing and exercises that uh, will help the questioner develop their ability to write lyrical prose. The music is it. And if you can stand up in front of, your workshop or a group of fellow writers, or, if you have to, your cat, um, if you can read it online, like, how you can get a Zoom, well, that's just you, and talk, say it to yourself, record it, and listen to the language. Are there cadences, rises and falls, and um, a kind of bardic, is what we're calling that, as if the language was being created right there in front of you. Um, they used to think, the gods inspired that kind of writing. And so, if you like to think of making an offering to the gods before you do it, that's an idea. I'm not hot on ritual, but it's a tribute to the gods when you come up with language like that. It's saying there's more to your story than simply, how Gretchen, found her long lost sister or whatever. That's just half of it. That there's more to writing. There's an the enchantment of writing is that lyricism for me, and for maybe some of you, because we seem to have similar tastes in writing. Let's see, who else is lyrical writing? Um, and then, another thing is to just look at their. I mean, Virginia Woolf is a classic. Take a look at there's uh, anything she writes really, but The Waves has descriptions of the sea that are just absolutely breathtaking, and the lyricism I mean, that's high lyricism. Nabokov and Flaubert. Well, that's interesting. No, nobody's said that yet. Nabokov, is he lyrical? I mean, he's certainly agile. Um, he makes he can be lyrical. He can also make fun of lyricism. That's interesting. Um, I wonder if I would call him a lyrical writer. It also seems to veer away from the um, under from the satirists' undermining of their of beauty. You know, they don't really soar with it as much as they. It's like they're embarrassed of their with their own ability, or they're trying to do something else with it. Um, let's think about. But Nabokov, I mean, you talk about being able to handle a long sentence. I mean, the guy is one of the most able uh, in handling language of anybody. I mean, that's a three-ring circus. Anything he writes. Let me look at my books over here, see if I think of anybody who also. There's a woman named Carol Mazow who is um, she's an experimental writer. She also writes in little chunks, but they're very lyrical within the chunk, um, as well as Ricky Ducournay. So Kate Braverman, Ricky Ducournay, um, very sensual writing, which I think is another name for uh, lyrical writing, is sensual writing. Um, Rebecca Solnit, the Jennifer says, this is nonfiction, but Rebecca Solnit, master of the delicious provocative meander. That's a beautiful sentence, too. Um, Sarah says, why can't we all be in front of our bookshelves right now? Yeah, well, mine are all over the house, so I can't be. Well, I guess I could mic up and wander like, Lady Gaga or something. Um, uh, who else is good at this? So, other exercises that, um, are there certain, you ask yourself, is there certain subject matter that tends to the lyrical as opposed to subject matter that kind of prevents it? Sometimes people can be very dark and lyrical at the same time. I think that you see that with, uh, like The Last Exit to Brooklyn or uh, The Invisible Man. Um, I think that Baldwin can be very lyrical. There's a tenderness about the lyrical standpoint. It's hard to be a tough guy and yet see that beauty. I think Annie Proulx can be really lyrical. Um, a favorite author of mine, Wintering, Wendy says, by Kate Moses. I love that book. Wintering is about Sylvia Plath, and that writing is extremely lyrical and just beautiful. Sarah says Leslie says Sarah says a favorite author of mine is Hannah Kent, Burial Rites and Devotion. Hannah Kent, cool. Burial rites. Um, some people can. Some people are suspicious of beauty. That they sense a trap. They sense artifice. They sense, they're being sucked into something, and they sniff at it like a wolf sniffs at the trap, or a coyote. Where they really feel more comfortable with a scrubbed down prose. Um, Whereas some of us, want that rapture, and some people are very suspicious of it. Um, let's see, but the question was exercises. So the long sentence, and I would even say try to write a paragraph and break it like into lines, like a poem, so you see where to take a breath, and then recombine it, and then see how that changes a sentence and gives it more of a lyrical feel. Okay, well, I thank you all for coming today and being so attentive and supporting lyrical writing, sensual writing, and it is certainly my favorite. Um, Jennifer says, "Oh yeah, I totally think of myself as a wolf sniffing at the trap, and yet I love so many of the authors cited today. Food for thought." Yeah, that's good. That's good. All righty. Well, thank you very much for coming for Writing Wednesday, and we will see you next week. And feel free to write to me in between, and I can do your questions. So, Marie, if you're here, um, uh, we got you. Okay.